Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen and a lady, for coming.
Yes.
Good morning. And of course, on Wednesdays, we normally shift matters pertaining to social in the society. To start with you, Paul, I mean, we have an institution that in the contemporary society faces a lot of challenge. And of course, while we acknowledge, some ought to acknowledge these happenings. And clearly, at the end of the day, this is an institution that needs to be spiced up because it's beyond the lens of the woman and the man. There lies an institution which fits the society. Therefore, how do we need to spice it up? First, simple question.
I think the first question should be, what has been going wrong? Because if we're talking about spicing up, it means things have been on a redundance. Things have been on a plateau at the end of the day. But looking at the core root of it, I think we have one major challenge. Because you find couples and individuals come together to try and get something to work together. But at the end of the day, the question is, do these individuals first understand who they are? It has to come from the persona. I think we had that discussion before we came on set. It is okay to try and fuse these things together. But if you're trying to upgrade something that you don't, first of all, understand the fundamentals of it, the pillars of it, as an individual, before you start talking to your partner and asking, this is not working for us because of ABCD, do you first understand the persona? Do you first understand yourself so that we can say, it's not spicing up because of this, and this is my part, and this is what I need to do, these are the roles I'll do. So most of the time, we talk about the institution, but not the items and the two individuals that make the institution at an individual level.
Okay, Faith Murithi, clearly we have two things here, the hardware and the software bit. And when we come together, Kagundu, gender first. So let me balance the case around the round table.
Software means the server could be hacked, right?
Well, exactly.
Possibly, yeah.
Possible, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, Faith, then clearly much of the debate revolves around the hardware issues, yet not on the software. I mean, there are these issues that we tend to not acknowledge or neglect them, but they are the most important or the critical bit of the building blocks of the marriage institution. I mean, how do we need to identify them and work on them effectively, even as we address the problems that come on board in the process of that spicing up the institution of marriage?
I think as a marriage mentor, how I view the whole concept is, and especially I'm glad you've brought up hardware and software.
Yeah.
First, before you say, I love you, figure out the I. And in the process of figuring the I, there's something I call the T block.
Yeah.
And I look at the T block as the hardware. What I mean is, draw a T, write your name and your spouse's name. Now look into things that you can't even change, even if you wanted to. Like tribe, does it affect your relationship? We'll get into the hardware first to do, because every relationship is unique. If let's say, for example, I and my husband, we're unique from you and your spouse. Totally different, so we can't even compare. But to figure out our mess or how to forge forward, we need to understand who are we as a couple, apart from also individual. And why don't we start the differences that we have in our own relationship? I mean, does tribe affect us? Does education, exposure affect us? Does our faith affect us? Do finances affect us? Do our past even affect us? Where we come from, our backgrounds. Once we're able to know, this is what we cannot change, this is who we are, embrace it. Now look for the software that works with your hardware.
Okay, Kagundu, clearly then we have many aspects to talk about here, but we'll love to break them down within if time allows us for that matter. I mean, here is the dating point from the onset with which you set the goals and before walking into the institution of marriage. Everything outside the premise of the institution appears to be simple because you, of course, will be ready to offer whatever that the other party will be able to, I mean, or will want at that time. You'll be at the point of juncture. I mean, you can provide everything at that moment. Easy, simple, fast forward. But once you walk in, there comes the commitment again and the shared responsibility to drive that institution forward. So how do we spice it up from that point then, and ensuring that we also know that certain responsibilities come specifically to one of the partners, because here there's no double up, there's no overlap of responsibilities. There needs to be clear, I mean, identification of these roles as we spice up the marriage. How?
Sure. I like it when they say that the whole thing has to start with the I, and you have to get to understand who you are. And most times you have an illusion of what marriage is, of what sex life is, before you get into it. But once you get to that, you find that things are different, because first of all, you really didn't know your partner, who they were, and what you expected, it would be different. So you find that issues to do with responsibility, they catch up with them, and they get exhausted. It gets hectic to a point whereby they even forget that they used to have a sex life. Through that, you find that they prioritize and they put more emphasis on how to maybe meet some bills and not how to engage as both of them. So I feel from the word go, what they are saying is so true, that they really need to get to understand what are the expectations, what are we going to do to make our sex life better, how are we going to spice it up, because at times even kids come over, and when the kids come to play, then I'm sure it will be different, because I'm sure you'll be having, before the kids, you are having sex 24 hours, yeah? But when they come, if that's possible, yeah? But when they come, then you have to create time. You have to create time for them.
It appears to be interesting to talk.
Okay. They tell us that should be the economy.
24 hours economy, yeah? So you really need to have clear guidelines on how to manage some of these issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are periods that are less enthusiastic when you work with that institution. Of course, intimacy, let me call it intimacy. I don't want to be very blunt on that. Clearly, it's an important aspect. It's an important aspect.
That one, right?
It's that one. That's one, yeah. Okay. It's an important aspect,
Yes.
a human need, because
Yes.
God has put it that way. But there's need to work it into in the right procedure. I mean, with the set laws or cultures with regards to the different category you belong to, because Kenya is multi-ethnic and multilingual country. But how well is it an additive, perhaps a recipe towards the spicing up of making that marriage institution interesting, in the sense that it does drive, it does give out the energy to move forward as a couple as we address the other differences together, but also plays the critical bit.
Yeah. You see, like any other relationship, and I think the moment you stop dating your spouse, then you start crumbling. Then that's why we are talking about repairing it, trying to spice it up. And the truth is, everything has a lifeline. The moment we're not married, yeah? So the moment you meet a girl and, you know, your first days you're talking, how is it like? You want to be in your WhatsApp, even if you can be able to text when you're just walking, it could be okay, right? But then you hit to a plateau, and this is a normal curve of it. But it does not matter where we are, it only matters about the two of us. You know, how are we functioning? Because I see the institution, it's like a machine. The steering cannot work on its own if it don't have the wheel, you know, at the end of the day. So it's about us. And once we make it personal between me and you, it means that at any given point, I will know where you are, you will know where I am, and we'll know what is not working and why it's not working. So first of all, it's two of us. Even if we add kids, even if their family comes in, it began with me and you. And the moment you lose that, the moment you stop seeing them as a person of need, as a person of interest, as a person that you should always refer to before you make your next step. The moment you lose that dating allure, the moment you lose that trajectory of it's us working towards this one goal, then we tackle the next goal. The moment that goes down, the moment the ball goes down, now we start talking about how do we repair with this, how do we work on this.
Okay, Faith, clearly then, here we have also another important aspect in that institution, and this of course is the critical aspect of communication, which is very, very key, because at the moment the starting point is 2, but then we will have the several branches that will come out. Kids, probably for some who are, who tend to have a lot of kids in our households, not to embrace the European context, because at the moment they're dwindling in terms of population, except for one country called Albania. But how well is communication important in the spicing up of the process, though? Because it's equally important in the sense that when there is a breakdown in communication, or when the communication is no longer as it was, or it has lessened, then clearly the mistrust comes in, questions will arise, and it puts one of the parties, either the one who has been in the pole position, in a tight spot to explain things.
Communication is very key. In fact, I would compare communication to taking a shower every day. Because when we talk about intimacy, the word that you were avoiding, now we're using intimate, that one. When you're talking about intimacy, it's very sacred. And secondly, it's a heart-to-heart language. It's not just physical. We have to go beyond the physical to having my heart speaking to your heart, my spirit speaking to your spirit, my soul speaking to your soul. So it's so intense.
Okay.
And even to reach that level, it's the same way physically we have to prepare. Everybody likes somebody who's smelling fresh. So we always go through the bathroom. Now, if you have to go to the bathroom to prepare physically, what about the heart? It is so important. And that's why communication is so key. If inside your heart you've kept bitterness and anger and forgiveness, no matter what you try to communicate, it will always come out bitter and your judgment is clouded.
Okay.
So you have to learn probably to let go and forgive, and also learn to be vulnerable, because more people are not vulnerable. They are vulnerable physically, but emotionally they are not vulnerable. And I don't think you can have that kind of intimacy to the highest level you'd like if you're not even vulnerable emotionally. And starts with just learning to communicate through heart to heart and not words. Learning to be sensitive to the other person's needs and not just about you, it's about the other person. The other aspect to look at that kind of intimacy, I want to bring another sort of concept of a Christian aspect, where we look at communion. And most Christians understand what communion is. Yet we go before God, when we're taking communion, we are sensitive, we listen, we look inward, not outward, before we even partake of that. We view, let me say my spouse and I view that kind of intimacy as communion. Are we conscious before we even engage? Have you searched your heart?
Okay.
Am I giving you my heart? Not just half-baked things, you know, apart from the way we say, prepare yourself, lingerie, put on sexy clothes and all that, which a lot of people are good at it. But it's more than that. Am I willing to give my heart to you wholly without leaving anything apart? And I think that brings, you know, couples to bond and renewal. So it can be taken lightly. How we view intimacy matters a lot as a couple.
Okay, Kagondu.